The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a low hum that echoed through the enormous room. Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez walked through them for what she suspected might be the last time. Her black diplomatic uniform was crisp and professional, but her brown eyes held the weight of 3 long years of frustration. Behind her walked 2 other humans, Captain Jake Morrison and Dr. Elena Vasquez, both looking as tired as she felt. The chamber itself was a marvel of alien engineering. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. 12 different sections surrounded the central speaking area, each designed for a different alien species. The Zephyrians sat in their crystal towers that sparkled with cold blue light. The insect-like Vraxi occupied dark honeycomb structures that clicked and buzzed with their rapid communications. The aquatic Delphians floated in massive water tanks, their tentacles moving gracefully as they spoke through translation devices. Lisa took her place at the human podium in the center. She had stood here hundreds of times over the past 3 years, always hoping that this meeting would be different. Today felt different, but not in the way she had once hoped. High Counselor X9 rose from his elevated platform. The reptilian alien was nearly 8 feet tall, covered in blue scales that reflected the chamber's lights. His cold yellow eyes looked down at the humans with what Lisa had learned to recognize as barely concealed contempt. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Rodriguez of the human species," X9 announced in his deep, rasping voice. "We understand you wish to discuss your application for membership in the Galactic Trade Federation once again." Lisa nodded politely. "Thank you, High Counselor. Yes, we would like to present our revised proposal for full membership." A sound that might have been laughter came from the Zephyrian section. Counselor Vex Prime, a being that looked like living crystal shaped into a vaguely humanoid form, spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "Ambassador Rodriguez, we have reviewed your species' capabilities extensively. While humans show some promise in basic manufacturing and resource extraction, you lack the intellectual sophistication required for full membership in our alliance." Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped forward slightly, her hands clenched at her sides. She had spent months preparing detailed reports on human medical advances, technological innovations, and scientific discoveries. All of it had been dismissed as interesting, but primitive by beings who had never bothered to truly understand human methods. The Vraxi representative, a creature that resembled a praying mantis the size of a small tree, clicked its mandibles rapidly. The translation came through the chamber's speakers. "Human military tactics are chaotic and unpredictable. They cannot be properly categorized or systematically applied. This indicates a fundamental flaw in human reasoning." Captain Jake Morrison's jaw tightened. He had commanded fleets in 3 different conflicts where human tactics had saved not just human lives, but alien ones as well. The Vraxi had even requested his assistance in dealing with pirate raids in the Outer Rim sectors. Now they called his methods flawed. The Delphian representative, a graceful being with 6 tentacles and large, intelligent eyes, swam closer to the edge of her tank. "Our environmental scientists have reviewed the human homeworld extensively," she said through her translator. "A species that has polluted their own planet to near destruction cannot be trusted with the delicate ecosystems we have preserved for millennia." Lisa felt her composure beginning to crack. Earth's environmental problems were real, but humans had also developed some of the most innovative solutions to ecological damage in the known galaxy. The fact that they were working to fix their mistakes seemed to count for nothing with these beings who had never faced such challenges. For 3 hours, the pattern continued. Every human achievement was dismissed. Every innovation was called primitive. Every strength was reframed as a weakness. The aliens spoke about humans as if they were not even present, discussing their limitations and potential like scientists. Examining laboratory specimens, finally, High Counselor X9 called for order. "The Council has reached a decision," he announced. "After careful consideration, we are prepared to offer humanity associate membership in the Galactic Trade Federation." Lisa's heart leaped for a moment until X9 continued. "Associate membership will grant humans limited trading rights in 17 approved sectors. You will have access to basic galactic technologies, though advanced systems will remain restricted. In exchange, Earth will provide raw materials, agricultural products, and manual labor to established member species. Human colonies will be limited to 12 systems, all subject to Galactic Council oversight. The chamber fell silent. Lisa stared at the High Counselor, trying to process what she had just heard. "You're offering us the chance to become your servants," she said quietly. "We prefer to think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement," Vex9 replied. "Humans excel at physical labor and resource extraction. More advanced species can focus on intellectual pursuits and technological development. It is a natural division of capabilities. Double quotes. Dr. Elena Vasquez made a small, angry sound. The woman had developed cures for diseases that had plagued alien species for centuries, using methods that their own scientists had declared impossible. Now she was being told that humans were only good for digging in mines. Captain Jake Morrison's hand moved unconsciously toward his sidearm. The gesture was subtle, but several alien security sensors immediately focused on him. The message was clear: humans were tolerated here, not welcomed. Lisa looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. These beings controlled trade, routes worth trillions of credits. They commanded fleets of ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks. They had access to technologies that could transform entire worlds. And they were offering humanity table scraps. While expecting gratitude, she thought about the human colonies that had struggled for decades to establish themselves without alien support. She thought about the brilliant scientists and engineers back on Earth who had solved problems that these advanced species couldn't even understand. She thought about the soldiers who had died protecting alien civilians, and the doctors who had worked without sleep to save alien lives. "High Counselor," Lisa said, her voice steady despite the fury building inside her. "I need to clarify something. When you say associate membership, you mean that humans would have no voting rights in council decisions. Correct. Your species lacks the experience necessary for such responsibilities. And when you say limited trading rights, you mean that we cannot compete with established species in premium markets. It would be unfair to subject you to such competition before you are ready. And when you say manual labor, you mean that humans would work in your mines, your factories, and your agricultural facilities, where your natural talents can best serve the galactic community." Lisa nodded slowly. She reached for her communication device and activated it. The device connected her directly to the human ships waiting in orbit above the planet. "Captain Morrison," she said, speaking to the Jake Morrison who stood beside her, but addressing his counterpart aboard the flagship Liberty. "Please initiate. Protocol 7. Recall all human diplomatic personnel from galactic facilities. We are returning to Earth immediately." The chamber erupted in surprised sounds from multiple species. High Counselor Vex9 leaned forward on his platform. "Ambassador Rodriguez, surely you do not intend to reject our generous offer without proper consideration." Lisa looked up at him, and for the first time in 3 years, she smiled. "High Counselor, we came here seeking partnership between equals. You have offered us slavery with better working conditions. Humanity respectfully declines." She turned and walked toward the chamber doors, followed by Captain Morrison and Dr. Vasquez. Behind them, alien voices rose in animated discussion. "Ambassador," called Counselor Vex Prime, "you cannot seriously believe that humanity can survive without galactic support. Your species is too young, too isolated." Lisa paused at the doorway without turning around. "Perhaps you're right," she said. "But we'd rather fail on our own terms than succeed on yours." The doors closed behind them with the same low hum that had greeted their arrival. The 3 humans walked through the corridors of the massive complex in silence, past alien beings, who stared at them with expressions that might have been amusement or pity. Within hours, human ships were leaving galactic space, carrying diplomats, scientists, and military personnel back toward Earth. The aliens watched them go with satisfaction, confident that the stubborn young species would return within months. Desperate for the trade and technology they had just rejected, they had no idea what they had just lost. 6 months had passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Council chambers, and Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UNS Liberty watching the last human transport ship leave Kepler Station. The massive research facility hung in the darkness of space like a metal spider, its multiple arms extending toward different docking ports. For 3 years, it had been home to the largest joint alien-human research project in the galaxy. Now it would continue without them. Dr. Elena Vasquez emerged from the station's medical bay, carrying a single data pad and a small bag of personal belongings. Her face was tired but determined as she walked toward the transport ship. Behind her, a group of Zephyrian scientists watched through the transparent aluminum viewing ports of their laboratory. Their crystalline forms flickered with what Jake had learned to recognize as confusion and growing concern. "Dr. Vasquez," called out Dr. Zix-7, the lead Zephyrian researcher. His voice came through the communication system with its characteristic wind chime quality. "Surely you can reconsider. The plague research is at a critical stage." Elena stopped walking and turned back toward the viewing port. "Dr. Zix-7, 3 months ago you told the Council that human medical research was primitive and unscientific. You said our methods were too chaotic to produce reliable results. I assume your superior Zephyrian logic will have no trouble completing the work." The crystalline being's form dimmed slightly. "Perhaps we spoke too hastily about human methods, but the research is too important to abandon over political disagreements." "This isn't about politics," Elena replied calmly. "This is about respect. When you're ready to treat humans as equals, rather than amusing assistants, we can discuss collaboration. Until then, good luck with your systematic approach to the Corvin blood plague." She boarded the transport without looking back. The Zephyrians watched as the ship pulled away from the station, taking with it the one human who had been closest to finding a cure for 3 different diseases that had plagued alien species for decades. Meanwhile, on the mining world of Titan 7, a similar scene was playing out. Human engineering crews were packing up their equipment while alien supervisors looked on with barely concealed amusement. The Vraxi overseer, an insect-like being named Clix-9, clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his species. "Human workers always so dramatic," he buzzed through his translator. "Our people mined asteroids long before humans reached space. We manage perfectly well without your chaotic methods." Chief Engineer Sarah Davis secured the last piece of human mining equipment in a transport container. The device was something she had designed herself, a resonance extractor that could pull rare minerals from unstable asteroid cores without causing catastrophic collapses. The Vraxi had used it for 2 years but had never bothered to understand how it worked. "You're absolutely right," Sarah said with a polite smile. "Your people have been mining asteroids for thousands of years using the same methods. I'm sure you'll continue to do exactly that." She climbed into the human transport ship along with 43 other human engineers, technicians, and miners. As their ship lifted off from Titan 7, Sarah looked down at the massive mining operation below. The Vraxi workers were already moving toward the asteroid fields, confident in their traditional extraction methods. 3 weeks later, the first mining accident occurred. A Vraxi crew attempted to extract platinum from an unstable asteroid using their standard thermal extraction process. Without the human-designed stabilization techniques that had been quietly implemented over the past 2 years, the asteroid shattered violently, destroying 2 mining ships and killing 18 workers. The accident investigation concluded that the asteroid had been unusually unstable, a rare geological anomaly. The Vraxi Mining Authority issued new safety guidelines and continued operations using traditional methods. The second accident happened 6 days after the first. This time, a thermal extractor overheated and exploded while processing a mineral deposit that human techniques had been handling safely for months. 12 more workers died. By the end of the month, mining productivity on Titan 7 had dropped by 60%, and the accident rate had increased by 400%. The Vraxi began to realize that the humans had been doing more than just following orders during their time at the facility. On Earth, President Karen Washington addressed a joint session of the United Nations Security Council. The woman was in her early 50s, with graying hair and the kind of steady presence that had made her a natural choice for leading humanity during the galactic crisis. "My fellow humans," she began, "6 months ago, we made the difficult decision to withdraw from galactic politics. Some have questioned whether we acted too hastily, whether we should have accepted the aliens' offer of associate membership. I want to address those concerns directly." She activated a holographic display showing trade statistics, mining reports, and diplomatic communications from across human space. Since our withdrawal, human colonies have increased production by 30%. Our trade networks, now focused entirely on human systems, have become more efficient than ever before. Our research programs, freed from alien oversight and criticism, have made breakthrough advances in 15 different fields. The numbers were impressive, but Karen knew that many humans still felt isolated from the greater galactic community. Earth's children had grown up dreaming of working alongside alien species, exploring distant worlds and participating in the grand civilization that spanned thousands of systems. I know that isolation was not what we wanted when we first reached for the stars, Karen continued. But sometimes stepping back is necessary to move forward. We are not hiding from the galaxy, we are building something better. Admiral Susan Blake, commander of Earth's Space Defense Forces, watched the presidential address from her office on Luna Base. Her desk was covered with intelligence reports that painted a very different picture of the galaxy than the one most humans were seeing on their news feeds. The reports told of increasing tensions between alien species that had been kept in check by human diplomatic efforts. The Corvan Empire was making aggressive moves toward Ilarian space, testing boundaries that human negotiators had helped establish. Trade disputes between the Delphians and Zephyrians were escalating without human mediators to suggest creative compromises. Most interesting to Susan were the reports about piracy in the Outer Rim sectors. For years, human patrol fleets had kept pirate activity to manageable levels using unpredictable patrol patterns and unconventional tactics. The alien species had complained that human methods were too chaotic to be properly coordinated with their own forces. But they had grudgingly admitted that the approach was effective. Now, with human ships withdrawn to their own territory, pirate attacks in formerly safe sectors had increased by 200%. Alien patrol fleets, following logical and predictable patterns, were being easily avoided or outmaneuvered by criminals who had learned to anticipate their movements. Commander Alex Thompson, monitoring galactic communications from a hidden listening post in the asteroid belt, was documenting all of these developments with growing fascination. The tall, quiet intelligence officer had spent 5 years learning alien languages and studying their cultures. He understood better than most humans how the different species thought and operated. "They're starting to realize what they've lost," he said to his assistant, Lieutenant Rachel Kim, as they reviewed the latest intercepts. "The Zephyrians have been trying to replicate Dr. Vasquez's plague research for 3 months now. Their systematic approach isn't working because the diseases don't follow systematic patterns." Rachel nodded as she filed another report about mining accidents in alien space. "The Vraxi are having similar problems. They're trying to use pure logic and traditional methods to solve problems that require creative thinking and adaptation." Alex pulled up a communication from the Delphian Trade Authority. The aquatic species was complaining about delays in cargo shipments along routes that had been optimized by human logistics experts over the past decade. Without human input, the aliens were reverting to older, less efficient shipping patterns. That added weeks to delivery times. "The funny thing is," Alex said, "they still don't understand what made human methods effective. They keep calling our approaches chaotic and unpredictable, as if those were purely negative traits." On the mining world of Titan 7, the situation was becoming desperate. Another mining accident had claimed 15 lives, and productivity had fallen so low that several alien companies were considering abandoning their operations entirely. The Vraxi Mining Authority finally swallowed their pride and sent a communication to Earth. The message was addressed to Chief Engineer Sarah Davis. Honored human engineer, we request temporary consultation on mining safety procedures. We are willing to offer significant compensation for your expertise. Sarah read the message in her new laboratory on Mars Colony, where she was developing even more advanced mining techniques for human operations. She smiled and deleted the message. Without responding. The aliens had made their position clear 6 months ago. Humans were good for manual labor, not intellectual contributions. Dr. Elena Vasquez received similar messages from research stations across the galaxy. 1 year after humanity's withdrawal from galactic politics, the first shots of the Hegemony War echoed across the outer REM systems. Commander Alex Thompson sat in his hidden monitoring station among the asteroids, watching the conflict unfold. Through intercepted communications and long-range sensors, the war had been brewing for months, but without human diplomats to find creative solutions. 2 proud alien civilizations had finally decided to settle their differences with violence. The Corvan Empire struck first. Their massive battle cruisers, built like floating fortresses and bristling with weapons, launched a coordinated assault on 3 Ilarian border colonies. The attack was swift, brutal, and entirely predictable. General Vex Prime of the Corvan military had followed the same tactical doctrine that his species had used for centuries. Overwhelming force applied to strategic targets, the Ilarian response was equally predictable. The peaceful, artistic species activated their ancient defense protocols, falling back to fortified positions while sending diplomatic messages requesting immediate ceasefire negotiations. Their military commanders, bound by traditions older than human civilization, could only respond to aggression in ways that had been established thousands of years ago. Alex watched the tactical displays with growing concern. Both species were fighting the war exactly as their cultures dictated, which meant neither could adapt to changing circumstances or find unexpected solutions. The Corvan would continue their methodical advance until they achieved total victory, or total defeat. The Ilarian would follow their defensive doctrines until they were overwhelmed or rescued by outside intervention. For decades, human negotiators had prevented this exact scenario. Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez had personally mediated 17 different disputes between these 2 species, always finding creative compromises that satisfied both sides without violence. Her approach had been called unscientific and chaotic by other galactic diplomats, but it had kept the peace. Now there was no one to think outside the rigid patterns that both species followed. The war would continue until one civilization destroyed the other, or until they both exhausted themselves and collapsed. Meanwhile, on the research station orbiting Centauri Prime, Dr. Maria Santos worked alone in her private laboratory. The human scientist had left her position at the Galactic Medical Consortium 6 months earlier, but she continued to monitor alien communications about the 3 plagues that were now spreading unchecked across multiple systems. The Corvan blood plague had been the first to break containment. Without Elena Vasquez's innovative treatment protocols, the disease had mutated into 17 different strains, each requiring a different approach. The Zephyrian scientists at Kepler Station were still trying to develop systematic treatments, but their rigid methods could not keep pace with the rapidly evolving pathogens. The second plague, a neural disorder that affected the insectoid Vraxi, had spread to their homeworld. Traditional Vraxi medicine, based on pheromone treatments and genetic therapy, was proving useless against a disease that attacked their nervous systems in ways their science had never encountered. The third plague was perhaps the most tragic. The Ilarian song death was destroying the artistic culture of the most peaceful species in the galaxy. The disease attacked the neural pathways that allowed Ilarian to create their beautiful music and poetry. Without their art, the Ilarian were losing their will to live. Maria had the cures. She had continued Elena's research in secret, using human intuition and creative thinking to solve problems that alien logic could not address. Her laboratory contained treatments that could stop all 3 plagues within months, but the pride of alien civilizations prevented them from asking for help. On the mining world of Titan 7, the situation had become catastrophic. The 17th Major accident in 6 months had killed 43 Vraxi workers and destroyed the main processing facility. Mining productivity had dropped so low that the entire operation was scheduled to be abandoned within weeks. Supervisor Clix9 stood in the ruins of what had once been the most productive mining station in the sector, the insectoid being clicked, his mandibles in distress as he reviewed the accident reports. Every traditional Vraxi mining technique had been tried, but the complex asteroid formations required approaches that his species had never developed. The human equipment was still there, stored in sealed containers that the Vraxi had been afraid to open. Chief Engineer Sarah Davis had designed devices that could extract minerals from the most unstable formations, but her methods had seemed so chaotic and unpredictable that the Vraxi supervisors had dismissed them as dangerous. Now, with their own workers dying and their operations failing, Clix9 found himself staring at the human containers and wondering if pride was worth more than lives. The galactic economy was suffering as well. Trade routes that had been optimized by human logistics experts over decades were failing as alien administrators tried to manage them using traditional methods. The Delphian trade fleet had lost 6 cargo ships in the past month, not to pirates or accidents, but simply because their crews had become lost in sectors where human navigation beacons were no longer maintained. The Zephyrian Commercial Authority had attempted to redesign the major shipping lanes using their sophisticated mathematical models, but their systematic approach could not account for the countless small variables that human intuition had managed naturally. Delivery times had doubled, costs had increased by 300%, and several minor species were facing food shortages because their supply chains had been disrupted. High Counselor Thex9 stood in his private chamber on Centauri Prime, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The blue-scaled reptilian had not slept well in months. Every communication brought news of another crisis, another system failing, another problem that seemed to require the kind of chaotic thinking that he had spent his career dismissing as primitive. The hegemony war was spreading. 3 more systems had been drawn into the conflict as ancient alliances were activated. The Corvan Empire was methodically crushing Ilarian resistance, while the Ilarian were following their traditional defensive strategies to inevitable defeat. Neither species seemed capable of finding a different approach. The plague situation was even worse. The diseases had spread to 12 different worlds, killing millions of beings and threatening entire civilizations. The most advanced medical minds in the galaxy were working on systematic solutions that always seemed to be one step behind the rapidly evolving pathogens. Economic collapse loomed as trade networks continued to deteriorate. Mining operations were shutting down across multiple sectors. Even basic supply chains were failing as alien logistics experts proved unable to maintain the efficient systems that human creativity had built. X-9 activated his private communication system and sent a message to the human embassy on Earth. It was not an apology or an admission of error, merely a request for temporary consultation on several minor issues that had developed since the humans left galactic politics. The response came back within hours. Message received and filed. No response authorized at this time. The High Counselor stared at the brief reply with growing frustration. The humans were being unreasonable, he told himself. They were allowing their emotions to override practical considerations. Surely they could see that the galaxy needed their assistance, regardless of past disagreements, but even as he tried to justify his position, X9 found himself remembering the last meeting with Ambassador Rodriguez. The human woman had spoken about partnership and respect, concepts that the Galactic Council had dismissed as naive idealism. Now, with their civilization crumbling around them, those concepts seemed less naive and more essential. On the war-torn border between Corvan and Ilarian space, refugee ships fled from the advancing battle fleets. Among them was a small vessel carrying Ilarian children who had been evacuated from the colony worlds. The young aliens had been exposed to human culture during the years of diplomatic cooperation, and many of them had learned basic English from human teachers. As their ship drifted through space, waiting for permission to dock at a refugee station, The children drew pictures with whatever materials they could find. Their artistic instincts, not yet fully developed, produced crude but heartfelt images of humans and aliens working together among the stars. One young Ilarian named Kessminer had drawn a picture of a human diplomat standing between Corvan and Ilarian representatives, helping them shake hands instead of fighting. At the bottom of the drawing, in carefully practiced English letters, she had written, "Where are the kind humans? Why don't they help us anymore?" The picture was transmitted to Earth along with other refugee communications, where it was seen by President Karen Washington during her daily intelligence briefing. The woman stared at the child's artwork for a long time, thinking about the consequences of humanity's withdrawal from galactic politics. The aliens had made their choice when they offered humanity servitude instead of partnership. But the victims of that choice were not just the proud leaders who had dismissed human contributions. They were also innocent beings like this young Ilarian artist who simply wanted the wars to stop and the diseases to be cured. The galaxy was dying, and everyone knew it. Admiral Susan Blake stood in the Situation Room deep beneath the United Nations building, surrounded by holographic displays showing the collapse of civilization across dozens of star systems. The war between the Corvan Empire and the Ilarian Federation had consumed 18 systems in the past 6 months, leaving behind nothing but radioactive debris and refugee camps. The latest intelligence reports painted a picture of complete systemic failure. The Corvan military machine was grinding forward with mechanical precision, destroying everything in its path, while the Ilarian defenders followed ancient protocols that had been designed for a different kind of warfare. Neither species could adapt their strategies because adaptation required the kind of creative thinking that their cultures had never developed. Dr. Maria Santos entered the Situation Room carrying a datapad filled with medical reports from across the galaxy. The human scientist looked exhausted after months of monitoring the plague outbreaks that were ravaging alien populations. Her private research had produced cures for all 3 diseases, but the alien medical establishments continued to refuse human assistance. "The Corvan blood plague has reached their homeworld," she reported to the assembled human leaders. "Their systematic medical responses are failing because the disease evolves faster than they can develop treatments. At current infection rates, the Corvan military will be too weakened to continue their offensive within 3 months." President Karen Washington studied the medical data with growing concern. What about the other plagues? The vaccine neural disorder has spread to 47 colony worlds. Their traditional pheromone treatments are not only useless, they're actually accelerating the disease's progression. The Ilarian song death has destroyed the artistic capabilities of 60% of their population. Without their music and poetry, many Ilarian are choosing death over a life without creativity. Captain Jake Morrison, recently returned from a reconnaissance mission to the war zone, activated a tactical display showing the current positions of military forces. "The situation is worse than our projections indicated. The Corvan have developed a scorched earth strategy because they know their own civilization is collapsing from disease. They're trying to destroy the Ilarian before the plagues destroy them." The holographic display showed the systematic annihilation of entire star systems. The Corvan, facing their own demographic collapse, had decided that if they were going to die, they would take their enemies with them. Their advance toward the Ilarian homeworld had become a race against time. With extinction pursuing both civilizations, Commander Alex Thompson emerged from the communications center with a stack of intercepted alien transmissions. The intelligence officer had been monitoring galactic communications for 18 months, documenting the slow collapse of interstellar civilization. His latest reports showed that the crisis was spreading beyond the warring powers. The Zephyrian Consortium has lost contact with 12 research stations, he reported. Their systematic approach to problem solving is breaking down when faced with multiple simultaneous crises. They're requesting emergency assistance from the Delphian Trade Authority, but the Delphians have their own problems. Alex activated another display showing trade route failures across the galaxy. The Delphian shipping network has collapsed completely. They've lost 37 cargo vessels in the past month, not to enemy action but to navigation failures and mechanical breakdowns. Their crews can't adapt to the changing conditions in space that human engineers used to handle automatically. The economic data was equally devastating. Mining operations had failed across 17 systems as alien engineers proved unable to safely extract resources from unstable formations. Manufacturing had ground to a halt in sectors where human logistics experts had previously coordinated complex supply chains. Even basic food distribution was failing as systematic alien planning proved inadequate for managing the chaos of real-world variables. President Washington walked to the center of the room, surrounded by displays showing the collapse of galactic civilization. How long before the crisis spreads to human space? Admiral Blake consulted her strategic assessments. The refugee crisis will reach our borders within 6 weeks. We're already seeing increased pirate activity as law enforcement breaks down in alien sectors. If the major alien powers collapse completely, the resulting chaos could destabilize the entire galaxy. Dr. Sentus spoke up from her position near the medical displays. There's also the biological threat. The plagues are mutating rapidly in alien populations. If they spread to human space, our medical systems might not be able to adapt quickly enough to contain them. The room fell silent as the human leaders contemplated the magnitude of the crisis. For 18 months, they had maintained their principled isolation while watching alien civilization tear itself apart. Now the collapse was threatening to engulf human space as well. The silence was broken by the arrival of Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez, who had just returned from a secret diplomatic mission to the neutral world of Haven Station. The woman who had walked out of the Galactic Council chambers looked older and more tired than when she had left Earth, but her eyes held a new determination. Haven Station has fallen, she announced quietly. The Corvan launched a surprise attack. 6 hours ago, the station's Vraxi defense coordinator followed standard defensive protocols exactly as predicted. The attack succeeded because no one was willing to try anything unexpected. The news hit the room like a physical blow. Haven Station had been home to 3 million alien refugees from the war zones, representing dozens of different species. It had been considered neutral territory, protected by ancient treaties and defended by some of the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. How many survivors? President Washington asked. Unknown. The Corvan bombardment was systematic and thorough. They're not taking prisoners anymore because they don't have the resources to maintain prison camps while their own civilization collapses. Captain Morrison studied the tactical displays with professional detachment. The attack on Haven Station changes everything. It proves that the Corvan have abandoned all pretense of civilized warfare. They're in a death spiral, trying to take as many enemies with them as possible. Admiral Blake nodded grimly. Which means the Ilarian homeworld has perhaps 4 months before the Corvan reach it. After that, both civilizations will be extinct, and the chaos will spread to every system in the galaxy. The weight of decision settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Humanity had the power to intervene, to stop the wars and cure the plagues and restore stability to galactic civilization. But doing so would require abandoning the principal position they had maintained. Since walking out of the Galactic Council. Dr. Santos broke the silence. I have the cures for all 3 plagues. They could be distributed within weeks if we had access to galactic communication networks. Millions of lives could be saved. Captain Morrison activated displays showing human military capabilities. Our fleets could reach the war zone within a month. Human tactical innovations could end the hegemony war in weeks, not years. The Corvan advance could be stopped, and both civilizations could be saved from extinction. Commander Thompson consulted his intelligence reports. The economic collapse could be reversed within 6 months if human logistics experts were allowed to redesign the failed trade networks. The refugee crisis could be managed, the mining operations could be restored. The entire galactic civilization could be rebuilt. President Washington looked around the room at her advisors, each representing a different aspect of human capability that could solve the galactic crisis. The power to save civilization was literally at their fingertips, but using it would require swallowing their pride and returning to a political system that had treated them as servants rather than partners. "What are our options?" she asked finally. Ambassador Rodriguez stepped forward. "We have three choices. First, we maintain our isolation and watch galactic civilization collapse completely, accepting that human space will probably be drawn into the chaos eventually. Second, we offer humanitarian assistance without political conditions, saving lives but accepting that the aliens will probably treat us the same way they did before. Third, we negotiate our return to galactic politics from a position of strength, demanding the respect and equality that we were denied 18 months ago." Admiral Blake consulted her strategic projections. "If we choose isolation, human civilization will survive but will be alone in a galaxy full of dead worlds and failed states. If we offer unconditional assistance, we'll save alien lives, but they'll probably go back to treating us as useful servants once the crisis passes. If we negotiate from strength, we risk being seen as opportunistic, but we also have the best chance of creating a truly equal partnership." The debate that followed lasted for 6 hours. Military advisors argued for intervention to prevent the chaos from spreading to human space. Medical experts insisted that humanitarian concerns should override political considerations. Diplomatic staff worried about the long-term consequences of each approach. The decision came when a new communication arrived from the refugee ships fleeing the destruction of Haven Station. The Galactic Council chambers had never been so crowded. Representatives from 43 different species filled every available space, their desperate voices creating a cacophony of alien languages that the translation system struggled to process. Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez walked through the massive doors for the second time in 18 months. But this time, everything was different. High Counselor Vex-9 stood at his elevated platform, his blue scales now dull and faded from months of stress and sleepless nights. The once proud reptilian leader looked down at the human delegation, with eyes that held no trace of the contempt he had shown during their last meeting. Behind him, the other alien representatives watched with expressions that ranged from hope to desperation to barely controlled panic. The Zephyrian section was half empty. Counselor Vex Prime's crystalline form flickered weakly as she struggled to maintain her physical coherence. The systematic research methods that her species had relied upon for millennia had failed completely when faced with the rapidly evolving plagues that now threatened to destroy their civilization. The Vraxi delegation buzzed with agitated clicking sounds. Their homeworld was dying from the neural plague that their traditional medicine could not cure. Mining operations across their territory had collapsed, leaving their economy in ruins. The insectoid beings who had once dismissed human methods as chaotic now faced extinction because their rigid thinking could not adapt to changing circumstances. The Delphian representative floated in her water tank, her tentacles moving in patterns of distress. The aquatic species had lost nearly half of their trade fleet to navigation failures and mechanical breakdowns that human engineers had once prevented with casual ease. Their sophisticated underwater cities were running short of basic supplies, because the complex logistics networks that sustained them had collapsed without human creativity to maintain them. Lisa took her place at the central podium, flanked by Captain Jake Morrison and Dr. Elena Vasquez. The three humans looked calm and professional, but their mere presence seemed to energize the desperate alien representatives who had spent months watching their civilizations crumble. The Council recognizes Ambassador Rodriguez of the human species, Vex-9 announced, his voice lacking the authority it had once carried. "We understand that humanity is willing to consider rejoining the galactic community." Lisa nodded politely. "Thank you, High Counselor. Yes, we are prepared to discuss the terms under which humanity might resume its participation in galactic affairs." The word terms sent a ripple of nervous energy through the assembled aliens. 18 months ago, they had been the ones dictating conditions to the humans. Now the situation was reversed, and everyone in the chamber understood the implications. Dr. Elena stepped forward and placed a datapad on the central table. The device contained the completed cures for all 3 plagues that were ravaging alien populations across the galaxy. This datapad contains treatments that can stop the Corvan blood plague, the Vraxi neural disorder, and the Ilarian song death within weeks of implementation. A collective gasp arose from the alien representatives. The Zephyrian counselors' form brightened for the first time in months. The Vraxi delegation's agitated clicking became excited chirping. Even the dying Ilarian representative, who had lost her ability to create music due to the song death, seemed to regain some of her former grace. However, Elena continued calmly, these cures will only be made available after our terms for galactic membership have been accepted. Captain Jake activated a holographic display showing human military formations positioned just outside the war zone between Corvan and Ilarian space. Our tactical analysis indicates that the hegemony war can be ended within 8 weeks using human military innovations. We have developed strategies that can stop the Corvan advance and force both sides to negotiate a peaceful settlement. The display showed battle plans that defied conventional alien military thinking. Instead of the systematic approaches that both sides had been using, the human strategies employed unpredictable maneuvers, creative tactics, and adaptive responses that neither the Corvan nor Ilarian could anticipate or counter. These military solutions will also be implemented only after our membership terms are accepted, Jake added. Commander Alex Thompson approached the podium with a third data display showing the collapsed trade networks and mining operations that had once sustained galactic civilization. Human engineers and logistics experts have developed comprehensive plans for restoring economic stability across 47 systems. These plans can be implemented immediately, but only as part of a formal partnership agreement. The evidence was overwhelming. Every crisis that threatened galactic civilization had a human solution ready for implementation. The aliens had spent 18 months trying to solve these problems using their own methods, and they had failed completely. Now humanity offered salvation, but at a price. High Counselor Thex9 leaned forward on his platform. What exactly are humanity's terms for rejoining the galactic community? Lisa smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Our terms are simple but non-negotiable. First, humanity must be granted full membership in the Galactic Trade Federation with complete voting rights and unrestricted access to all galactic markets. Several alien representatives began to object, but the desperate circumstances made their protests sound hollow. The Zephyrian counselor, her crystalline form dim with sickness, raised a weak hand for attention. These terms are unprecedented for a species so new to galactic politics. Second, Lisa continued, ignoring the interruption, humanity requires the establishment of human innovation centers on 12 key worlds throughout the galaxy. These centers will serve as hubs for adaptive problem-solving and creative research that complements traditional alien systematic approaches. The Vraxi representative clicked his mandibles in distress. Such centers would give humans unprecedented influence over galactic research and development. Third, Lisa said, her voice carrying the authority of a species that held the key to galactic survival, we require the creation of a new position within the Galactic Council, the Adaptive Solutions Coordinator. This position will have permanent authority over crisis management and diplomatic innovation, and it will be held exclusively by human personnel. The chamber erupted in shocked voices from multiple species. No alien civilization had ever been granted such broad authority within the galactic government. The very concept of adaptive solutions was foreign to species that had built their civilizations on rigid systematic thinking. Dr. Maria Santos entered the chamber carrying medical reports from the refugee camps where millions of aliens were dying from treatable diseases. While you debate the unprecedented nature of our terms, she said quietly, 14,000 beings died yesterday from plagues that I can cure in a matter of hours. The chamber fell silent. The human delegation had made their position clear. Salvation was available, but only on terms of complete equality and respect. The Ilarian representative, her voice weak from the song death that had destroyed her artistic abilities, spoke first. On behalf of the refugees dying in camps across 17 systems, I vote to accept all human terms immediately. The Corvan military attache, his warrior culture grudgingly respectful of human tactical effectiveness, nodded his massive head. The Corvan Empire recognizes human military superiority and accepts their terms. One by one, the alien representatives voted to accept humanity's conditions. The Delphians, facing economic collapse without human logistics expertise. The Vraxi, dying from diseases that human medicine could cure. The Zephyrians, their vaunted intelligence useless against problems that required creative thinking rather than systematic analysis. The vote was unanimous. Dr. Elena immediately began coordinating the distribution of plague treatments to medical stations across the galaxy. Captain Jake deployed human tactical advisors to the war zone where they quickly implemented strategies that brought both sides to the negotiating table. Within days, the systematic destruction that had characterized the Hegemony War was replaced by confused retreat as Corvan commanders found themselves unable to predict or counter human-designed defensive tactics. Commander Alex supervised the restoration of trade networks and mining operations, using human engineering innovations that alien workers were eager to learn and implement. The economic systems that had taken decades to optimize were rebuilt in weeks using adaptive approaches that could respond to changing conditions, but perhaps the most significant change occurred in the council chambers themselves. The rigid protocols that had governed galactic civilization for millennia were supplemented with human-inspired procedures that allowed for creative solutions to unprecedented problems. Ambassador Lisa stood before the reassembled council 6 weeks after their return, delivering her first report as humanity's adaptive solutions coordinator. The Hegemony War has ended with a negotiated settlement that gives both sides shared custody of the disputed territory. The 3 major plagues have been eliminated from 41 systems, with complete eradication expected within 2 months. Economic productivity has returned to pre-crisis levels in 37 sectors. High Counselor X9, his scales now bright with health after receiving human medical treatment.